Hi, I'm Catherine Comden, Behavior Program Manager at Willamette Humane Society in Salem, Oregon. Have you ever wondered what causes people to bring animals to our shelter? Have you ever thought about how scared some of those animals are, coming into a new place, uncertain of their futures? It takes a compassionate and caring staff to ensure great outcomes for the animals in our care. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to Stacy Thurman, Willamette Humane's Animal Care Manager. You'll hear some exciting and emotional stories and learn how you can help your own pets become more resilient to change. Thanks for joining us on this week's Pets and People. Thank you so much, Stacy, for coming on the show. I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for bringing Hunter. Now, Hunter was one of our transfer dogs from the ASPCA, I think, from California, right?
Yes, he was actually. He came up on a truck with a bunch of other dogs and one sibling when he was only about 2 months old.
Just a baby.
Yeah, just a wee little thing.
And how often do we get transfers from the California region for dogs coming in?
1 to 2 times a month, and several dogs each time.
Yeah, that's really exciting because it brings in dogs that otherwise might not have other options.
Right.
So do you know much about how that program got started and how long we've been doing that at the shelter?
With ASPCA, we've been doing it about almost 2 years now, I believe. And we started with just taking a couple dogs from them at a time, and it's grown, and we take up to 20 dogs at a time now from them, which is incredible. They go to different shelters, and they send us the possibilities, and we choose from those which ones we think would do the best here.
Wait, are you telling me that dog shopping is part of your job?
Yeah, it is.
You get to look through the available dogs and say, these are ones that we think would do well in our area.
Yes, we do.
And so I've got to ask, did you have your eyes on Hunter from that early?
I didn't, actually. I was only a frontline intake specialist at the time, so I never knew what we were going to get. I was just told to be here to look at the transfer dogs and what time to be there, and there he was.
And so how long have you been at Willamette Humane?
Right about 2 years now.
Okay, so you and Hunter kind of got started there around the same time.
Right around the same time. He came about a month or two after me, yeah.
Okay, and so since you've started at the Humane Society, I've watched your career change and grow and have added responsibilities because let's face it, you rock at what you do.
Thank you.
You're very, very good and compassionate. And you seem to have a really special way with some of the most challenging animals that come into our shelter. And I don't know if you learned that somewhere or that's just your nature. Have animals who are especially frightened, have always been drawn to you?
You know, not really. When I was a kid, I think I was one of those really overwhelming children that just wanted to hug all the animals. I'm not like that anymore. I did learn this when I moved into the animal welfare supervisor position. I had an office where I had my own space and I had more time. And there was this one little dog that people were like, nobody can touch this dog. He can't be walked. And he's just this little thing. And I was like, well, you know what? I have about an extra hour right now. Let me see what I can do with that. And by the end of the hour, he was approaching me and leaning on me for support. And I said, no, this is workable. We can do something with this. He wants to be friendly. And after a few days, I could pick him up. I could do everything. And this is a dog that was trying to bite everybody his first day. So he's been adopted since then. He went to foster and has since been adopted.
Fantastic. That's just a great story. I love it. And I see you work that magic again and again. It seems like you're the one that we all turn to when we have a dog come in, especially who is just, maybe overwhelmed with the transition. And I don't know how much people really think about the fact that when the animals come into the shelter, they lose everything that they ever knew. So it's a brand new place. It might smell kind of like a vet clinic, which is always stressful for animals. And then their owner that they've known and trusted leaves. And there are some really valid reasons that people do that. And I've really watched our staff be amazingly compassionate with a remarkable number of people whose stories might be anything from they lost their home to a relative who cared for the pet, died, and nobody has the resources to take care of the pet. And then the animal, though, the effect of the animal is they're just freaked out. They don't know why the things have changed or what to expect, and then your team is asked to deal with that, both on the human side and as well on the animal side. And so can you explain a little bit about the process that maybe from the animal's perspective and what do we do to help make those animals more comfortable?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is one size does not fit all. Some animals come in and they're already incredibly resilient and they're happy just because there's somebody there and they're just happy to be around people. And they do show signs of stress, but they're able to cope with that. So we can get them fully processed and vaccinated and flea treated and everything done with them their very first day within an hour of them arriving into the shelter, and then they're up for adoption already. But we do get some that take a lot longer than that, and it happens several times a week that we get one in that my office is right off of the exam area now, so I get to see all of that and I see all the hubbub, and I always look at the animals more than I look at the people. And when I look at an animal sitting on the exam table who's showing all these signs of fear and confusion and distress, I usually step out of my office and say, you know what, let's have him come hang out with me for a little while. I do my job with them in the office with me. I let them exist near me until they realize that I'm not a threat to them. I am a very calming presence for them, and they learn to trust me and they let me do everything that needs to be done so they can either be adopted or go to a rescue partner. Right.
I love that process and watching you do that. And I think that's why those animals are on our radar, or at least my radar a lot, being the behavior program manager. I always tell people, they'll ask me about a dog in the hall, in the 8 kennels and our adoption kennels, and they'll say, well, what do you know about that dog? And I go, nothing, which is probably a really good sign, because if he's just moving through the system, I may not ever lay hands on him. He might just be processed by the team and doing fine and resilient to all those changes, walkable by our least experienced walkers, able to go out and go to play group and go with whoever. And we get lots and lots and lots of those animals. So I don't want to give the impression that we don't have those animals. We do. We have lots and lots of them. But I'm always touched by the ones that maybe need a little help as they go through those transitions. And it's amazing. It doesn't take that long, really, to help an animal relax and understand that it's an okay place where he's landed, or if he's passing through, it's an okay place and these are nice people. And I love that process of just giving them a moment to relax. And he's starting to take a little nap. I think he says, I can relax right here. It's all good. And so back to a little bit more about you and your experience. What brought you to work at Willamette Humane?
Well, I've always loved animals. Like I said, I was that child who was overwhelmingly in love with animals. I went to college for it. My major was animal science at Oregon State University. My option was animal behavior and bioethics, which has served me very well in the position that I am in right now. And I never knew what I was going to do with it. When I was in college, people would ask me, what are you going to do with this degree? And I was like, I don't know. So I got out of college and I went to work at a bank, and I worked there for about a year. And I remember my now husband, but boyfriend at the time, took me to Heartland Humane Society in Corvallis. And I was just looking at the animals who weren't adopting, and there was this one little cat that looked so forgotten up in his kennel, and I opened his kennel and he launched into my arms and started nuzzling my neck and purring, and I looked at Michael and I said, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I found my job at the Humane Society.
Yeah, and you have, as I said, moved up and up and up until you're in your current position, which was especially created for your talents and abilities.
It was, yes.
Overseeing both the animal care and the intake department. And so give us a day in the life of Stacy. What sorts of things do you get to do every day?
Well, I think my favorite part about my job is that it's never the same 2 days in a row, ever. And a lot of times I do have a lot of computer work, clerical work. I make schedules, I approve things. So the management is definitely there. But for example, just a couple of days ago, I didn't set foot in my office until after lunch. I was out helping customers at the front desk. I was directing directing people towards where the adoptable animals were. I was making appointments for people to bring in their beloved pets. I was helping with surrenders and with stray animals, and I was helping process those stray animals. And yeah,
which can be a really interesting thing. I know that especially recently, it seems like we've gotten in some animals who have found themselves stray, and usually dogs, and they can be very, very bothered by these intruders. They've been captured somehow, first of all. So they're captured and they're in an unfamiliar person's car, and now we need to remove them out of that car and bring them into the shelter and then try to process them or get them where they need to go. And sometimes that doesn't go as smoothly as we would like, but one thing that I've noted that you and your team do is you go as slow as the animal needs you to go. And what happens is that you wait until the animal's ready for whatever the next step is. I've never seen anybody on your team just continue to press an animal once that animal says, hey, you know, I need a minute. We've all done a good job, I think, of training each other to stop and watch and listen to what the animals are saying and go at the pace that they can do. And so some of our procedures are then that we bring an animal in and we might just leave them in a kennel for a day or two just to relax and get the noises of the shelter kind of under their belt and understand that food is coming, opportunities to go outside and go potty are coming, and before we go and do a whole bunch of invasive procedures with them. And then if it looks like that animal is going to be maybe not quite ready for the adoption floor, we do have foster options, and you're involved in helping make those decisions as well.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how the shelter comes to make decisions about the animals in our care. Is that just one person? Are you being the person to make those decisions? So let's talk about that.
Absolutely not. I have an incredible team, as you know, at the shelter. We have a foster and rescue coordinator. Her name's Ashley, and she's phenomenal at her job. And so my job is very simple. If I see an animal that I think the kennel life is just not going to be something that they will thrive in, whether they're too fearful or they're too stressed or whatever the condition may be, I get their information over to Ashley, and she finds foster for them.
Yeah. Hunter needed a little bit of a break there, talking about meeting animals' needs. It was clear he was becoming restless, so we've let him go visit with Dad, and we can continue. One of the things that I'm most excited about working at the Humane Society is a program or an idea that B.J. Anderson, our executive director, brought, and that is the 360 idea, where we're meeting together every week and talking about every animal in our care from every department's perspective. And these meetings will take us, it's about an hour long for dogs, sometimes a little longer if we have tough situations to work through, but every perspective is there: medical, behavior, the intake team, the adoptions team, the welfare team, the volunteers that are involved, the management of the shelter, they're all there. And we sit together and we make these conversations happen. And it can be really emotional, it can be very creative, where we find solutions. Like if we've had a dog, for example, that's been sitting in the shelter for 3 weeks or something and is just not getting any attention, we've been able to brainstorm on great ways to bring that animal's attention into the community through some wonderful volunteer things that happen and all sorts of things. But you work both in that capacity, representing your departments there. I know you have a ton of experience, though, helping people with that transition of bringing their animals into our care. I wondered if you had any stories from sort of the intake perspective and helping people, as they're very emotionally usually bringing these animals in.
I think the most important thing to remember when we're doing that is a lot of people say, well, you work with animals, it must be because you don't like people. That's not true at all. You have to love both to be able to do what we're doing here. And I feel very deeply for the people that come in through no fault of their own. Generally, they, for whatever reason, are losing one of their best friends, and it's a very emotional moment for them. And we do still have to ask these questions and get this information so we can place this animal, but you have to do it with such compassion, and you have to give them whatever time they need. There have been many times we only have a certain amount of time for appointments, but there have been many times that I will send somebody to a visitation room and say, do you need a few minutes? Go sit with your pet. Just take some time. Let me know when you're ready, and we'll pick this back up.
Right. The care and concern that you have for people, the compassion that you bring to your job is very, very evident. In fact, you created a new program that had not been at the Humane Society before. Would you tell us a little bit about the Callback program?
I would love to. It's my pride and joy right now, actually. We get a lot of attention for it. I designed this program so that if an animal is not doing well in our shelter environment, if they are deemed maybe not an adoption candidate, then we give the original surrendering party the option to take the animal back into their care. I haven't had to make very many of those phone calls, but the people who sign them, it gives them peace of mind knowing that if anything were to happen, we would absolutely contact them. And they seem to really appreciate that from us.
Sure, that would be, I mean, a lot of times people are in a desperate place, and they've brought their pet to us because they see no options. And then we take care of the pet, we give them all the opportunities, but there are some times where during those 360 meetings, maybe we've had the animal in our care a while, maybe he is not doing well in the kennels, which often happens. It's very hard for some of these dogs and cats to respond with anything but depression sometimes. And if the animal is just spiraling downward, and we can see that it's not humane to keep them in that environment, we start trying to get creative with options. We check out foster, we check out foster-based rescues. We have partners with those. We try to figure out some kind of an option, and then it's nice when we're able to use that callback program and call those owners and say, look, we've had your pet for this long time. Usually it's a long time, and nothing good is happening on our end. We're not able to place your pet right now. Could you take the pet back, and how do they respond when they get that phone call?
They usually just want more information, so I always make those phone calls with all of the information in front of me so that I can tell them exactly what's happening, whether it be something medical or something that I just say, he's really struggling to be here. What the day looks like for an animal there is 3 different strangers who are volunteers take them out on walks, interactions with multiple staff members who essentially are also strangers, and then members of the public walking through. An animal that can't handle that does not make him a bad animal. Some of them just aren't resilient enough to handle that.
I don't think I could handle that.
I don't think I could either.
It's a lot of pressure. I'm really glad at the end of the day to go home.
Yes.
It can be a very stressful place, and for those animals who are designed to be companion animals and not to have that 1 or 2 people that they are bonded to, can be very, very hard for them. So I'm really proud of you for that callback program. And we offer other services at the shelter, and some of these can be difficult to talk about, but I would like to talk about them because, one, I want the public to know that we offer them. And I also want people to really understand that these services are offered in a compassionate manner. And of course, what I'm talking about are the end-of-life services. And I know that you and your team end up talking to those people as they're making appointments and they're coming to your front desk. So would you like to talk about the process and how you've trained your team to help these people navigate that difficult path?
Of course. I think the most important thing, again, is to be always compassionate and always understanding and always validating the person that's in front of you. Instead of just saying, oh, well, what's going on with your animal? When they come in, you want to say, I'm so sorry that you had to make this decision. Let me ask you just a couple of questions and see where we're at. And occasionally they've come to that decision because it's not something they can handle, but I know that it's something we can handle. And I can say, hey, I have some great news. That's actually something that we can treat here. Would you like to surrender your pet instead? And that usually they respond to that beautifully, and they're just like, yes, please help me. Yes. But occasionally, and most of the time, they are right, and it is time for them to let their animal go. And we counsel them. We are probably one of the few places I know that will hug their customers if we see a need to, and if the customer needs that from us. And we assure them that their animal will be treated with the utmost respect and love, and that they won't have to wait. We will immediately go and perform this euthanasia. The animal will not sit in a kennel and wait for that in fear. That's not something that we will do.
Yeah, I've been impressed. I've been witness to some of these situations, and I'm so impressed with the people in our staff who are trained to perform those euthanasias. I know people have, sort of old, cartoonish horror thoughts of what that must look like, and I'm here to tell you it's not the case.
No, it's not.
The room is calm and quiet. The animals are relaxed and usually eating hamburgers that the volunteers have brought in, or the owner has given them to say goodbye with, and they are often sedated first and completely relaxed, and it goes very peacefully. And especially on the animals who it was true that their medical needs are such that there's just nothing more to be done. I sense a thankfulness, where the animal is just like, oh, thank you, I can finally get some good sleep. And it's just a really peaceful and relaxing and respectful way to go. Yes. And that's just an amazing thing. So, But for most of the animals that are coming in, that's not the solution. That's not what's happening. In fact, it happens very rarely. That's a question I get a lot. They'll say, well, you must, have to put animals to sleep all the time. And I'm like, no, we don't. It happens very rarely and not very common at all. And when it's done really peacefully, as I said, whether it was an owned animal or an animal that was already in our care. But most of the animals coming in, that's not the conclusion. So let's talk about some of the things that we do to care for the animals and reduce their stress and to help them move forward. You mentioned our volunteers that we delightfully use for all sorts of things, including the dog walks. We have a wonderful place for them to walk. What are some of the other things that you've seen developed since you've been at the shelter to help the animals with enrichment and just in the care in their kennels?
When I first started at the shelter, you were not there.
Oh.
And so that's something that I've seen grow immensely since I've been there. And I was so excited when I found out that there was going to be a behavior and training department and that we would have you leading it. I was thrilled. I had taken a class for clicker training kittens from you, and I was so thrilled. I've seen people using Open Paw more, which is a training program where we feed the dogs their meals out of the treat bucket, so it's out of someone's hand. So they learn that a person is good. A person means that I'm going to feed you and you're going to get what you need from this person. So they seek human companionship much more readily after that. That's something also you guys are doing things like scent tubes. You have your behavior and training team make these little little treats and little toys that they can play with and just keep their mind working. So even if they're in a kennel, their mind is still stimulated and they're still getting to do those things that keep them healthy and happy.
Yeah, it's kind of, there are some days when I go, these dogs have it better than my dogs at home. My dogs are home being bored right now, but these dogs have it pretty rich here. But it's good because they're under a lot of stress and they have, as you said earlier, different levels of ability to deal with those. I recently took a webinar by Patricia McConnell through the ASPCA Pro called Building Resilience in Dogs, and it was well done, and there were thousands of attendees on this webinar, and it was fun to hear her kind of go through the list, and I was checking things off, and I went, yeah, we're doing that, and we're doing that, and we're doing that with these dogs. But more so, I wanted to segue over quickly into our pet parent tip, which is how to help your own dogs be relaxed and to learn to overcome stress and to learn to adapt to their environment. And I know that you've personally experienced this with a few of your own personal pets.
Yes.
So some of the things that you've taught your dogs to do have included being able to handle having their nails trimmed, being groomed, being able to accept the presence of another dog, and being able to just adapt to changes in their environment. And so some of the easy things that you've done, how have you managed to do that in your own home for our audience?
Well, I think the biggest challenge I've had in my own home is the dog that I didn't bring today, because this would have been a little bit overwhelming for her. Her name is Georgia. She's less than a year old, and she came in as a stray from California initially on the ASPCA program as well. The biggest thing that I've done for her is really just pay very close attention to what she's telling me. If she is uncomfortable, I never force her into a situation because that's not the time to teach her anything.
Right.
It's forcing her into a panicked fight or flight moment and then asking her to sit. I mean, if you threw a spider on me, would that be the moment to ask me to do anything?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That's not the time to teach me. So I always let her do things at her own pace. For a while there, doorways were very scary for her. So I would spend, when I had to go to work with her, I knew, and I would leave about 10 minutes early because I was like, this is going to take us a minute. And I would just be very respectful of her, and she'd stand a ways back from the door, and I'd say, it's okay. And I'd put like a little trail of treats, and she'd get a little closer and a little closer. And now she just waits at the door, and when I open it, she bounds on through, and I say she can go. And doors are no longer a fear thing for her.
Choice is so powerful, and I love that you mentioned body language, because that's something that I teach a lot of, and helping people to read their dog, understand what those stress signs are so that you're not pushing beyond. And we have some great resources for you on our website if you want to take a look. If you go to our YouTube channel on our website, you'll see in the upper right hand corner of any of the pages on our website a little YouTube link. If you click on that, then you can go to our created playlists and find canine body language. Of course, we're specifically talking about dogs here, but there's also some information for cats on the other playlists. But watch those. There's about 8 or 9 videos that we have loaded up there for you to see how to read your dog's body language, and the stress signals that they're giving mean something. And if you want a how to fix your dog in one easy lesson, my message is give them space, give them time, give them treats.
Yes.
And if you give them enough space and you give them enough time, they will take the food. You can try some different kinds of food. But usually when people say, well, my dog won't take the treats, I say, you're too close or you're going too fast. And so when you have a fearful animal who needs some time to adjust, those are the 3 tricks, is to give them space, give them time, and give them treats. And then the animal begins to go, well, you're not rushing me, you're not pushing me, the triggers, whatever's scaring me is far enough away, and I can just have the choice whether I want to proceed or not. Very, very powerful. And it seems on the front end like it's going to take a while, but what have you experienced with Georgia? It might have taken a little while in the beginning, but now...
Now I forget that she was afraid of doors most of the time now. Even new doors. It used to be only doors that she was familiar with, she was okay with. But now I can take her pretty much anywhere around the shelter that she's never been, and any doorway she's just like, oh, I'm ready, I know this is what we do, and I get a cookie on the other side.
That's right, that's right. Hurry up, let's get to the cookie part. And I found using that style of training, what we end up with is a pet who is not only more relaxed about that specific trigger, but ready then with when the next trigger happens, when the next fearful thing happens. Instead of them bolting, they go, wait a minute, I bet you've got a good answer for me, don't you? And it can create this relationship where when he or she is afraid, instead of bolting, they look at you. And I've experienced this with my own dog, who's a little afraid of thunder and fireworks.
Yes.
And when she gets a scare, she comes and finds me as opposed to bolting away. And it's a very nice thing. So we're here to tell you that you can build some resilience in your dogs and cats, introduce them to change slowly, and help them to overcome that fear through positive reinforcement training, paying attention to space and time, and making sure that they're getting paid well when those scary things are in their presence. Well, I think we're just about out of time today, so I wanted to thank you, ask if you had any last words.
I mean, come see us at the Willamette Humane Society. We are always making changes and adjustments because that's just the mark of a great organization. But we would really love to meet you and give you a tour and let you know what we're up to.
That's right, absolutely. So come on down to Willamette Humane Society on Turner Road in Salem, where you just might meet your next #1 fan.
Ready?
Hi, buddy. Hi, honey.